instructional coach for QComp coach in Eastern Private County Schools, which is Chesed and Hanson. And my kids go to Minnetonka. I saw Minnetonka. Here we go. They're at Minnetonka High School. I'm just going to jump right in. So if you heard me speak last July, that was on Dr. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I referenced him a couple times today, but we're going to take a little bit of a different path.
In tonight's education, our school teachers play a major role in helping us all to learn. But tonight, more of them say they're no longer satisfied with their jobs.
Yeah, that's according to a yearly teacher reciprocal survey put out by the insurance giant MetLife. 11 News Education reported Tim Putin was lobbying the major in that story. Tim, I have 2 sisters who are teachers, so that report doesn't shock me. Any surprises in it for you?
Well, no, the teachers can say it best, and they're doing so in this survey. Just now, it paints a rather dismal picture of stressed out and frustrated teachers who say they're being forced to take on even more responsibility.
Okay, what you're going to do now is you're going to take a look at the question.
It's a profession with lots of responsibility and long hours. And it's all adding up to just 39% of teachers who say they are very satisfied with their jobs. That's down 23 points from a few years ago. And a little more than half of those surveyed report feeling under stress several days a week. We ran the numbers by 3 Baltimore County teachers. Between them, they've got more than 60 years in the classroom.
It's real. We're doing all we can do with what we have. More and more is being handed to us. You take a look at the scores and talk about AP. We are getting more and more of our students taking the AP, passing the AP. We number 1 here in Maryland for 3-4 years now, but it's never enough.
The teacher survey also found that 61% of less satisfied teachers worked in buildings where their budgets had been cut. But in spite of the challenges, 97% gave their fellow educators high marks.
I think there's a frustration of we keep being asked to do more with less. In the last few years, I've been asked to cut 2 teachers in my department, which means, our student population isn't reducing, so that means that teachers are teaching more students per class. What we do is hard. We do need support. There's no way possible that we can do an outstanding job or the job that society blames us for not doing without any support. We don't have parent support, we don't have budget support, legislators are cutting us left and right, but yet all of them are taking the credit for what we do.
The head of the Teachers Association of Baltimore County says, for some, that sends a mixed message.
They are, on one hand, told that they are the future, we help all of these students to improve and are the answer to what the problems are, and on the other hand, we're told we're not doing a good enough job.
Now, this level of frustration is not only among teachers. Principals have said they are in the same situation, no satisfaction on the job. We have a copy of that survey on our website, log on to WBALTV.com and click on Education Alert. Live in the 11 Newsroom, Tim Tootin, WBAL, TV 11 News.
How great is the name Tim Tootin?
You're darn tootin'.
You're darn tootin'. Consequences of teacher stress far-reaching, affecting not only us, but everyone around us. Not just our students, your spouse, your significant other, your kids, because when we come home, we're fried. That news piece right there, I don't think any of you were shocked. No one was going, oh my gosh, not me. Who's stressed? And this was in Maryland where this was. I've always been fascinated by the whole teacher stress thing, and I've been doing a lot of research on it, especially now that I'm a peer coach. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so I just started to pull it up, look around in the last, so how many months? Oh, I'm not on. Check. No, I'm on. Okay. Since I've been here, since last July. And if you just Google teacher stress, 6 ways administrators can reduce teacher stress. And I don't know if anyone in here is an administrator. I have my admin degree, so I took all of those classes as well. And it's just things like, let them know before you come in and observe them, things like and it wasn't really anything useful. Lots of teachers are super stressed out. 3 top causes of teacher stress. I wouldn't even have to waste your time and ask you what are the reasons we're stressed. They kind of went over a lot of those in that news article. But look at these. I love this one right here. The Teacher's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide. 77 proven prescriptions to build your resilience. 77 ideas to make us feel better about our lives and our jobs. And I actually pulled this one up, and it's, work out and, hang out with your friends and all the stuff that we're told, but darn it, those 77 things just haven't been working for a lot of us. Look at this one, breakdown. How ominous is this? Breakdown. This whole picture, this scene right here looks like something out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Like, if you look back down that hall, it's like a teacher being yanked up in a straitjacket. Like, this is serious business. And then give us a coloring book. Because I know that if I'm going to buy a coloring book to feel better about my teacher stress, it better come with a bottle of wine. This ain't enough for me. This ain't enough for me. I did find one gentleman, an African-American gentleman by the name of Cantus Simmons. And he has this YouTube video. You could actually jot down his name and look it up for yourself. I thought he was pretty good. I think he would be a good speaker. I don't know a lot about him, but he only had 5, not 77, 5. And a few of these, I thought, yeah, these are decent. Okay, number 1, I have to say I didn't buy into his number 1. Number 1, sketch yourself. And he said something like, if you sketch yourself as you were when you first got hired, when were just your dreams of how great this job was going to be, and then sketch yourself now and compare the two, and I'm like, yeah, okay. 23-year-old Tommy, 50-year-old Tommy, it's just a bunch of wrinkles and, weight gain, that didn't seem like that would have helped for me. I did like number 2 though. Revisit your why, and this is something that I use even in the coaching world. What made us become teachers? Why did we go this path? For me it was, I came from a long line of teachers. Bob's daughters are teachers. Sometimes how many of you come from a teacher? Only, okay, that's a small number. Usually it's bigger than that. And let's face it, and no one wants to hear this, but June, July, and August, let's be honest here. Come on. My mom was a teacher, and I remember her saying to me, for a while in college, I was like, oh, I'm going to go into psychology. I'm going to go into sociology. And she's like, next summer, if you want to have a family. And I still hear her words. Our summers are pretty darn great. But that still doesn't change our, those other 9 months. Flip your failures into success. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but he's just kind of like, okay, so the things that you've screwed up on, how can you come out of that? So, you irritated some parents, or in a coaching role, you have everyone upset, or you've upset some kids, and we've all made these mistakes. How can we come out of it? I like number 4 a lot. Find new educators to grow from. He talks about that you are only the average of the people you hang around with. So if you're sitting around with 4 or 5 teachers who are bitching about their job, most likely you're getting sucked into that too. But if you start finding people that have a more positive feel, it's easy to be pulled into that. Even a situation like this where you guys don't know each other, isn't it great to meet new educators and to talk to new people? We normally groan about having to take a class or having to go to a professional development day, but I actually come out a little invigorated after I've met some new teachers from different districts. I do love the commiseration, like, oh yeah, it sucks here too, the grass isn't greener type thing, but yet I always walk away thinking, educators are good people. These are cool people. If you're in an airplane and you meet someone and they're like, oh, I'm a teacher, you're like, oh, what? Oh my gosh, can I follow you on Instagram? Be my Facebook friend. Because you're like, automatically, it's just like this disclaimer that you're not an asshole and you're a great person because you've given up your life for kids. So there's something good about that. find new people. And in this QComp position, it has been such a gift to go around and to meet new teachers and to see all the awesome things that are going on. Number 5 is a big one. Get the lead out of your butt. Not your butt, but your butt. Professional development, that's fine, I can meet new people, but it's taking up my Saturday. You know, try to stay away from the negative but. And of course, you know, we're human beings. If you saw me last July, you know how I got into the whole thing of talking about stress and happiness. That's me. I'm not sure how old I am here, I think first grade, and my older brother and my dad. And I'm from the Iron Range, Virginia, Minnesota. It's up by, just north of Duluth. Hibbing, Grand Rapids, Evelyn, by Lubbock, Giants Ridge. Give me some nods if you know where it is. The Iron Range is called the Iron Range because this is where, it's a big mining area, and in those communities that I just listed, everyone works in the mining industry, and my dad was in that industry as well. I have no idea where we're going here that even has that suit coat on that my mother made. But she took this picture of us because she made all of our outfits. And I'm gonna talk about how we have so many things today, and you know, back in this day it was like, okay, your clothes were homemade. And so damn itchy that thing probably is. I have sensory just looking at it. Yes, I was a product of the big hair, and the polka dot stripes. This is me with my mother. I was very, very close with my mother. I was the only daughter. She was only 23 years older than me. She was super fun and cool. Like I said, she was a teacher too. We were together all the time. She was my best friend. She was my everything. Then after college, I married a guy who was awesome and a pilot, and we had 2 beautiful kids. And that's a crappy picture of him, which I enjoy because we're divorced now. He saw this once and he's like, why are you putting that crappy picture of me? I'm like, because I can. And I show it to everybody. But at this moment right there, I thought my life was perfect. I was like, oh my gosh, I have these 2 beautiful kids and a great husband, and I love my job and my parents and my family. And then my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she died at the age of 67. This was actually taken at my wedding. And my dad died of a broken heart a few months after that. And I completely fell apart. I was not, nothing bad had ever happened to me. I had a great childhood, I had a husband and perfect kids and a house, and I couldn't believe that this cancer had taken hold of my life and completely destroyed it. I crawled into bed and I stayed there for 3 months, and I wanted to die. And my kids were little, I didn't know how to get out of it. I really didn't care. I wasn't even showering. I would throw my hair in a ponytail and go and teach. And you know, we have the kind of job where you can't really hide that. You know, we don't have an office where we can just close ourselves in our office. I was a 5th grade teacher at the time, and you know, you have to go out and face that. And I would come right home and I would go back to bed again. And I did this for months. And my marriage was already unraveling it before this, and this didn't help at all. I was saying last July when I was here, I ended up going to this training for Dr. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I didn't really want to go to the training. I was, you know, still depressed Tanya, and I'm, you know, all bitter, and okay, I'm gonna sit in the back and I'm gonna have my computer open and I'm gonna online shop while the guy is talking. And he made us then close up our computers, and I was pissed. And so I had to actually pay attention, and all of a sudden, all of these things made such sense to me. And I was telling the people that were here last July, it was like this light was shining on me, and it was this moment where I was like, because the presenter was talking about people that are not proactive and people that don't think win-win. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm the negative on all this. Everything he's talking about how good people are, I'm the opposite. And I could feel myself like shriveling in my chair, and I'm like, I'm an asshole. And it was this moment it was a defining moment for me where I was like, I just became extremely uncomfortable and emotional. And I don't even know what, but it changed my life. And I walked out of that training and I started to live by Dr. Covey's 7 habits. And I'm not going to talk about them today. I did the last time I was here. But it seems like old-fashioned because it came out in 1985 and everyone has this book somewhere shoved on their shelf and it has dust all over it. And even the reading of it is pretty dry. But now they do this whole thing of Leader in Me for kids. You can do it in the schools, and I did it with my 5th graders, and it just became this whole thing that we were living by in the classroom. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but then I want to do a counterintuitive look to this. But first, let me show you one of the main things that Covey talks about, that we all have crap in our lives, and the only way that we can change it is by taking control of the one thing we have control over, and that's ourselves. So, if you've ever been in a relationship with anyone, whether it's your brother, your sister, your parents, your wife, your significant other, your husband, there are moments where you just loathe those people, and you're like, oh, I wish I could change this about him or this about her, and you can't. We can't. By our age, we know that. We can't change other people. Think how hard it's hard enough to change ourselves, let alone to get a grasp on somebody else. And I just want to show you this 1 minute about Covey, because this 1 minute kind of encompasses everything that his message. And we'll go from there.
Monday morning, and it's raining. A gray, melancholy day. On a day like this, maybe we can be excused for feeling gray and melancholy ourselves. We get into a mood, and the whole day seems to go badly. Don't you feel better when the weather outside is great? But what if you could carry your own weather within you? When you carry your weather with you, you can choose to be consistent regardless of how people treat you. That's what it means to be proactive. Being reactive is the opposite of being proactive, not taking responsibility for our own life. You always see yourself as a victim of the weather, of your moods, of someone who has it in for you. We have the power and the freedom to choose, to create our own weather each day.
That was Dr. Covey right there speaking. A lot of his habits are spiritual. It's the whole do unto others. If you have any religious background, that's what his habits are based on. When I walked into Barnes & Noble bookstore last summer, this is what I saw right when I walked in. I'm like, wow, we're being inundated with self-help books. I don't think it was that way 20, 30 years ago. I don't think when we walked into Barnes & Noble, the first thing we saw were shelves of books of how to get out of this slump that we call life. And that got me to thinking. So I gathered up all the books, because I'm a book freak, and I started to read all of them and take notes. And these two right here are two of my favorites besides the Covey. And I referenced this last July, but I'm going to get more into this today. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Now, if you don't like the F word, you might not like me now for the next 15 minutes, okay? And this book is not for you. He must use it 2,000 times through the book. This is a great one. This is amazing. Okay, I'm gonna reference the subtle art of not giving an F now for about the next 10 minutes, because it's a compare and contrast to Covey, but there's good stuff in here. Happiness is like being cool. The harder you try, the less it's going to happen. So stop trying, start living. Oh my gosh, this goes against everything we have ever been told. When I read this, it blew my mind. I'm like, what? I would love to throw Dr. Covey and Mark Manson, who is the author of The Subtle Art, in one room. Dr. Covey sadly has passed away. He died a few years ago, a bicycle accident, hit by a car. Mark Manson is in his 30s. Not to be confused with Charlie Manson, who's in jail with a swastika on his head. But every time I say Manson, that talk about, there might have been, maybe change your last name to Tupton. This is counterintuitive to everything Covey's saying. So you just saw that video where Covey's like, you carry your own weather. You wake up in the morning, you decide what it's going to be. And then Mark Manson comes along and is selling 2 million copies of this book that says, the harder you try to be happy, the poorer the results are going to be. What? We'll talk more about it. This is him right here. I believe that today we're facing a psychological epidemic, one in which people no longer realize it's okay for things to suck sometimes. Exactly. We are handing out trophies to kids when they didn't even earn it. You guys, I don't own a trophy. I am 50 years old. I do not own a trophy. My name is on a plaque at the Pioneer Bar in Eau Claire, where I went to college for Bartender of the Year 1989. Damn it. It's all I can do every time I go there is not just yank it off the ball and go, I don't own a trophy. Because they weren't handing them out when I was a kid. You had to earn it. You had to be like first in state or something, and I just never was. Iron Range couldn't compete with Tonka. No. And back at the beginning of our country, life sucked, and they knew it. They were like, oh my gosh, we have to build our house with no tools. We're just going to take these logs and put them up, and we'll cut a window, and hopefully we'll get glass in 20 years when Pa makes enough money from harvesting the wheat. Yeah, life sucked back then. And then it got good. And then now with social media, with Facebook and Instagram, now it's perfect. Now everyone is perfect. Everyone's so happy in their marriage. Where are those marriages? Because that wasn't mine. Everyone has money to go to Turks and Caicos, and their kids are all ace students, and even their dog is highly trained. I can't compete. I can barely go on Facebook anymore. I feel so depressed. And what's happening is that we are telling each other, you're perfect, you're gorgeous, I love it, oh my gosh, and we're believing it. And now then cancer hits you, or your spouse comes home and says, I just cheated on you, I want a divorce, and we're crumbling. And we're raising kids who are going to crumble because they have been given a trophy for everything and told how amazing they are. And as teachers, we're told to do that. We don't even give grades anymore. We're in standards-based grading out in Eastern Carter County. And there's no deadlines. You can keep turning your shit in as long as you feel like it. Yeah. You didn't study for that test? Who cares? Take it again tomorrow or in 4 months or next year. I just heard of a couple kids that came back and they had graduated and they got to come back and change their transcript. Boom! This is where our stress is. Because if you're a teacher and you're trying to keep, okay, I'm digressing. Okay, but, so these kids, these millennials, and he's a young guy, he's a millennial, they're thinking that things are really great. And then life comes in and it's like, hey, it's okay. It's okay if you're sad, it's okay if you're depressed. It's okay to feel stress. Life sucks sometimes. Mark Manson calls this an existential crisis. Well, what is an existential crisis? When an individual questions your life, when you question the meaning of your life, the purpose of your life, what am I doing here? You wake up and you're like, oh, what am I doing? Is this the life that I want? Is this all there is? Wishing away the school year, counting the weeks to spring break, counting the weeks, until MEA. Is this all there is? All the years just blending together, praying for 67 when I get a full pension? There has to be more than this. This is an existential crisis. And Mark Manson thinks it's because we have too many material items and opportunities. Let's go back to Laura Ingalls' day in the beginning of our, let's go back to me back in 1974, whatever that was, where I had 3 outfits that my mom sewed. We had 1 car, we had 1 TV, 3 channels, TV stopped at 10:30 at night, and damn it, I was the remote. Okay? My dad was like, we're done with Fantasy Island, go turn it to my ex-husband and I were having dinner, we're close friends now, with the kids right before Christmas. 7th grade and 10th grade, our kids, and said, what are you guys thinking for Christmas? They couldn't think of anything. My kids could not think of anything they wanted for Christmas. Why is that? Because they already have phones and Apple Watches and the AirPods, buds, stuff hanging out there. And my daughter, she's going to be 16. I want a car. I want a car. I was going through the Sears catalog at Christmas, circling, maybe I'd hoping for that doll if my dad had had a good year. I want a car. Chris and I laughed. We looked at each other and went, what have we done wrong? This is our fault. This is our fault. Mark Manson says we have too many items, we have too many opportunities. I even look at my kids at Minnetonka High School. I don't know whether to put them on the Vantage program and the IB program, or go to Normandale, or take this track or that track, or you can take you can do anything from fencing to wrestling to bowling to online Phi-Ed. Not sure what that is. Online Phi-Ed that my neighbor was complaining about because their son just got a C in it. I'm like, how do you get a C on online Phi-Ed? We have too many things, we have too many opportunities, and we don't even know what is important anymore. And like Manson would say, we don't know what to give a fuck about because there are too many things. Existential crisis. It reminds me of back when my dad had a buddy who came over. His name was Larry. And I don't know, this must have been 1980, so I was probably in like 6th grade. And Larry had just gone through a divorce. And back that was like, And my mom said, Larry's gonna stop by. Dad's friend Larry's gonna stop by. He's divorced. Dun, dun, dun. And I'm like, so I hung around because I wanted to see what divorced looked like. I thought I'd be able to tell. And I could tell. Larry walked in. He's got his hair all slicked back. He reeked like some brute cologne. His shirt is unbuttoned like practically to his waist. And he's got his chest hair all moosed up around these big gold chains. And I knew when he had arrived because the roar of his Harley, and he got off of that, and he brings in some 30-year-old girl. Big boobs, that's what you'd expect with Larry. And they came in, and I remember it so well, because I'm like, that's what divorce looks like. You get the Harley and the girl with the big boobs, and I could see my dad was like, hello, and my mom is, just trying to shut the whole thing down right away. Like, not to give my dad any ideas that this is what divorce looks like. And after they left, and Larry jumped on his bike and roared away, and my dad was kind of watching out the window. And I remember thinking that, I watched my dad's face, and my mom was just so disgusted. She said, John, I don't think you need to be hanging around with Larry anymore. He looks like a bad influence. And I remember the look on my dad's face, it was almost envy for a split second. There goes Larry roaring off with the wind in his hair with this beautiful woman behind him. Now, did Larry take a risk in his life? Was this a big growth moment for him? Or was he just trying to deal with this depression the best he could? But we called that a midlife crisis back then. Now it's not midlife crisis. Now it's existential crisis. Okay, this is another one that blew my mind. Constant positivity is a form of avoidance, not a solution to your problems. What? What? It took me weeks to really unravel this. I kept rereading his message. I would talk to people about this. And really what, it's so counterintuitive to Covey, who says, you wake up and be a positive person. He's not saying don't be a positive person. He's saying don't ignore those feelings that tell you something's wrong by telling yourself it isn't. For example, and this is a stretch, but if you thought that your spouse was cheating on you, and it's more of a keeping your head in the sand type thing. Or let's put it towards you as an educator. Last year, my administrator told us she was going to just do this whole fruit basket upset, and we were all going to be switching grade levels, and I might go to first grade, and this whole thing that she thought would be a fresh idea, and everyone was freaking out. And some of the people were too afraid to say anything because they don't want it. Well, I'm not going to rock the boat. That's more what his message is here. Constant positivity. Like, yeah, it's great. It's fine. Okay. Yes, you can move me from 5th grade to 1st grade. That's not a solution. Okay, this does not mean to not be a good person or positive person. Public blame. This is going to talk about now how having the platform of social media is making people turn nasty and say things that hiding behind a computer that they wouldn't say face to face. However you feel when you look at this picture, it's divided our country. And what has happened is people have taken this emotion and whether if they have, they're hiding behind a computer where they can say things or at demonstrations, but things have become very, very ugly. Manson says this, just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. Being offended is a choice. So his reminder is, if you feel offended or irritated, that don't let it get the best of you. Because again, it's a choice to get out of that ugly feeling. This was in the media a couple weeks ago. And when it first came out, it was tilted to one side, and then more video evidence came out that turned it to another side. But what it did is, I was following this, and I couldn't believe the onslaught of how people just came out in waves to say such terrible things about this boy or terrible things about this Indigenous gentleman. Awful, awful, awful things. As far as, he's a drunk, he's a liar, he can't be believed. He's a crazy Trump follower who should not even get into college after this. Who are we to judge what should happen to this young man? Or we don't know what path he's been on. But we've taken this social media online power and it's getting the best of us. Manson talks about fault versus choice. Well, it's not my fault I have to go teach first grade, so you know what, I'm just gonna do a crappy job. I don't care. Well, it's not my fault my husband's a jerk. I'm just not gonna have sex with him anymore. I'm just gonna not be the wife. fault versus choice. Let's pretend a newborn baby is dropped on your doorstep. You open your door, oh my gosh, there's a newborn baby in a basket. It's not your fault that that baby was put there. So now you need to make a choice. What are you gonna do with the baby? Close the door and say, it's not my fault. We are constantly thrown with situations that we think suck and that we've got to make, that we could say it's not my fault. But now what are you going to do about it? This is a long thing that says that we have control. We always control how we interpret what happens to us, as well as how we respond. And by not responding to things, we're just allowing it to get the best of us. What about real trauma or tragedy? You know, not being irritated who the president is, or what about people who, you know, like your kid gets cancer, or you do, or you were sexually or emotionally abused? Then what? Then it gets a little harder to pull yourself up. You know who this is? Malala Yousafzai. Malala Yousafzai. Malala is a Pakistan gal. She's 21 now, but in 2009, when she was a young girl, is when she started to become a little famous. She grew up with two younger brothers and her mom and her dad. And her dad, very strong in the world of education, built a lot of schools in their small community in Pakistan, and puts a lot of strength and growth into Malala to be highly educated. In 2010, when Malala was a young girl, the Taliban took over her town, and they shut down all her father's schools, and then they allowed one to reopen, but said none of the girls could go, and that the girls couldn't even learn, even at home. 2010, this is only 9 years ago, where the Taliban said no longer can girls have an education. And Malala was just, she couldn't believe this, so she kept talking about it. And an American reporter caught wind of this and heard about this girl in this small little village who kept saying that she was going to keep studying even though the Taliban had warned that girls couldn't. And this reporter did a little expose on her and did a story on her in a documentary. And the Taliban caught wind of it and tried to kill her. She was on a school bus leaving school. She still continued to sneak into school. And the Taliban pulled the bus over, which it shows a picture of the bus in her book. It's not a bus at all, it's a truck with a bench on it. And the Taliban pulled it over and said, which one of you is Malala? And she said, me, and he shot her in the head. Luckily, that bullet grazed the side of her head. But I'm gonna show you a clip of her in a minute. You'll see that this side of her face is slack. She doesn't have motion in it anymore. But in her book, she talks about that she woke up in the hospital. They airlifted her 4 different times. By this time, she was kind of famous. And she ended up doing her recovery in England. And she said she wasn't afraid. And she still continued on her quest that girls get an education and all children get an education. The Taliban heard about this, that she didn't die. And there's still a fatwa on her head today, a bounty, meaning they're still trying to get her. She wrote this book, I Am Malala, and she ended up getting the Nobel Peace Prize when she was 17, the youngest recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. If you've never heard her speak, you'll enjoy this. This is when she's on Ellen.
She's not the only one. She's on Mercury. Introduce yourself.
You really are so impressive and so inspirational, and I'm so happy to have you here. I watched the documentary, I have read your book, and if you haven't, you must read this. It's quite a story. So you were shot in the face at 15 years old, and you have no anger towards the man who shot you. How is that possible?
I think they made a big mistake. Taliban stopped girls from going to school. But I had this little bit of fear that what would happen to me, how would I feel if someone attacks me. But after that incident when I was attacked, that fear just went away. And as I said in my speech at the United Nations, that my weakness, my fear, and my hopelessness died on that day. And I became stronger than before. And now I strongly believe that nothing can stop me in this mission, in this campaign of education, to say that girls deserve the right to go to school. And it's the love of people as well that has encouraged me and helped me not to think about what I have went through in my life. When I see people praying for me, taking care of me, and sending cards and letters every day, it makes me stronger. It makes me stronger every day, and I feel that whatever happened to me, I should now forget about it and continue my life with more courage and more work.
Well, I am so glad that you came out of that experience as this person. We are lucky to have you in the world because you're making such a difference. You were in a coma for how long?
At least a week.
And then it took you a long time to learn how to speak and walk and everything again.
Then my parents came and the doctors, they would bring the cards that I had received, and I just could not believe it. It was astonishing that I'm going through this difficult situation, but there's so much love out there that is helping me to forget about all the pain that I'm going through.
Yeah, there was a lot of love, a lot of people, and it really did raise awareness in a way that never had happened before. Your parents are in the audience right now, and I know that your dad empowered you tremendously. How did he do that?
Well, my father always says that ask me what I did, but ask me what I did not do, and I did not clip her wings. So he has not clipped my wings. He has allowed me to fly as high as I can, and this is how we want parents to be, to allow their children to fulfill their dreams, to achieve who they want to be. It's not that girls don't have the skill or don't have the talent to do something in their life. It's that they are stopped in society. So my father did not do that. He did not stop me. And I'm really thankful to him. Also to my mother for giving me the strength and this courage to go forward. A little bit to my brothers. A little bit.
Just a little bit to my brothers.
That is so well put in every one of those things. I love your brothers, by the way. It was good dancing with you. It was really fun. So you won the Nobel Peace Prize, and how did you find out you won?
So I was in my chemistry lesson in school and just studying about atoms and those things. And suddenly my teacher came and she surprised me, said that you have won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I said, okay. And then
just another
I
day.
said, I want to finish my school. And because I am standing up for education and I have been given this award because I'm fighting for children's rights to go to school. So I deserve this right to study today in school, finish my school day, and then I'll go and have press interviews and stuff. So
Right.
I finished that day.
Instead of going to talk to the press, you finished your school day. You just decide, well, that's why you are who you are. And so you're big. I think that what's important here is that we take it for granted here that girls go to school and that we are able to be educated. But I think that is really important for young girls here to understand that that's not easy, that women and children are not.
So she has a great message. If you have kids of your own, this is an awesome book. I had my daughter read it, and I need to get my son on it because she talks about all the trials and tribulations of her journey to where she is. And I mean, when you listen to a gal like that who was shot in the head and has the Taliban after you and to still not be afraid and not have fear, then we wonder what we're complaining about. This is a man too who I mentioned him last July. Viktor Frankl was put into the concentration camps back in the 1940s during World War II, and his wife was killed and his entire family was killed. He was the only one to survive. And he says that he survived that from always keeping this positive mindset that they could do anything to him. They could take everything from him, but the only thing that they couldn't take was his attitude. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. You know, Malala could have been in the hospital and just, I'm done. I can't talk, I can't walk, I'm gonna be paralyzed, my face. And he could have, my wife is gone, my siblings are gone, my parents are gone. No one can take that inner strength that every one of us carries, that attitude that we can make things better again. Mark Manson goes on to say, everything worthwhile life is won by overcoming a negative experience. And everything that you have had a negative to it. Think of even when you met the person that you loved. It had that little negative of that scary feeling of, do I approach him, do I approach her, do I reach out, I met you in a bar, do I go up and say hello? It's that I might be rejected. That's a negative experience you had to push through. We made decisions to go to college, and then we had to write a resume and apply for a job and go into the interview and be completely stressed out. Those were all negatives. And constantly life is throwing negative, scary experiences at us that we have to choose to overcome. The avoidance of suffering is a form of suffering. I'm not gonna do it, hey, do you wanna run this 10K with me? No, I can't run, I'm not a runner. Everyone's a runner, you can be a runner. Don't say, I'm not. Yes, I can. Everyone can be a runner if they want to be a runner. The denial of failure is a failure. Hiding what is shameful is a form of shame. That's why it's so important to get any therapy if there's ever been any big loss. I went to 2 years of therapy after my parents and my marriage. It was extremely helpful to talk about it. I think if I had kept it all in, I wouldn't be in the place where I am today. And that's why it's so impressive too to see people come out and talk about violence or any sort of sexual abuse that they've had. To avoid pain means you care too much about pain. If you're able to not give enough about pain, you become unstoppable. If you're like, you know what, I'm gonna get out there, if I have to walk the first mile, and if I have to just walk that first mile every single day till I get up my endurance, I'm gonna do it. Oh, I knew it was gonna suck when I left my husband. I had a beautiful home on Lake Minnetonka, and I moved into a 2-bedroom rental house. I knew it was gonna suck. But I had to push myself out of what I knew was bad for me. I could have avoided the pain. I could have told everyone that I was still happy. That's going back to that constant positivity is not going to make growth for you. That's what that meant. You're defined by what you are willing to struggle for. Maybe you have an idea for something you want to get off the ground, like you're really good at golf, and you're like, I want to be kind of a little golf tutor, and maybe in the summer teach some kids how to golf and get a whole thing going through community ed. You're like, yeah, no one will do it. Now we start telling ourselves all the negatives. Who you are is defined by what you're willing to struggle for. Don't just sit there, do something. Take the first step, walk the mile. When I was deciding to leave my crappy marriage, I just started to drive around and look for houses that were for rent. I started to just play with my budget a little bit. I was going to therapy and talking about it. It wasn't, I didn't just wake up one day and go, I'm leaving you. I had to start small. I had to do something. The answers will follow. But if you just tell yourself everything's fine and I don't want to make change, then you're going to wake up and 10 years later, everything's still the same. You know who this is? Daniel Rudiger. Rudy. How many of you have seen the movie Rudy? Oh, come on! Do we have 2 more hours? Let's put this until 4 o'clock. Daniel Rudiger, true story. Back in the early 1970s, he wanted to go to Notre Dame. That's all he wanted to do was go to Notre Dame. Well, he was the third of 14 children, Daniel was, they called him Ruby, and he had dyslexia. He didn't have the grades to get into Notre Dame. So he went to community college for 2 years and ended up getting a tutor, and he applied to Notre Dame 4 times. Not giving up. How much is that? Don't just sit there, do something. How much are you willing to struggle for what you want? On the 4th time, they finally said, sure, okay, I'm in Notre Dame. Well, that wasn't enough. Then he decided he wanted to be on the Notre Dame football team. So he went on as a walk-on. And they put him on the practice team, which is, it's my understanding that that practice team wasn't like to be pulled up to play. It was a team to actually work, correct? To work with the Notre Dame football players, like to just pass the ball back and forth to them. But he worked so hard. And the story goes that this guy gave 200% at every practice, every time, cleaning everything up, doing all the water bottles, he was just like, and everyone's cheerleader. And the coach at that time was Dan Devine. He came in coming off of his stint with the Packers. And he came in and became the Notre Dame football coach. And the story goes that in Rudy's last year, senior year, it was the last home game, and it was the final play. And all the players were, saying to Devine, let him play. And I've done some research on Dan Devine, and he said that it was actually his idea to let him play. It wasn't like the movie shows where the players are throwing down their jerseys going, if you don't let Rudy play, we're gonna quit. It wasn't like that. In fact, he was irritated with his portrayal of himself in that movie, because he's like, it's my idea. But that didn't make a good movie. So Dan Devine told Rudy, it was actually the last 3 plays, that he let him go out there. And his dream was fulfilled. And on the 3rd, that final play, he sacked the opposing team's quarterback. The Notre Dame football team took him and carried him off the field. That was the first time that had ever been done at Notre Dame, and it's only been done 1 other time since. And now this gentleman is, I think he's about 70 years old, and he is an inspirational speaker. He goes around and speaks. Good guy to get in here, right? And this, we don't have time to show the clip, but that's the final clip of the movie. But rent this movie if you've never seen it. It turns out adversary and failure are actually useful, adversity, and even necessary for developing strong-minded and successful adults. And this goes with what we know about kids. They have to fail sometime in order to get better. Our struggles determine our successes. This goes into stuff we don't have time for. This was a gal, 97. She lifts weights 3 times a day. She deadlifts 130 pounds. 97. My grandma just died last summer at the age of 103. I think she could have done that at 97. She didn't really slow down until about 102. It's a great video clip of her. I thought this was interesting too. Screw finding your passion. You already know what it is, you're just ignoring it. This is so counterintuitive from Covey's Feel Good. Oh, just find your passion. He's like, screw that, you know what it is. You know what you want to do. You know how you want to improve yourself, whether it's losing weight or running that marathon or opening your own golf deal. Maybe it's changing careers. You already know what it is. Choose how willing you are to suffer, because that's the hard question that matters. Final words here, Mark Manson. Bravery is not the absence of fear. When people say, oh, you're so brave to do that. No, scared shitless. Bravery is feeling that fear, the doubt, the insecurity, and deciding that something else is more important. Be brave. Make it matter. I like this, this quote has nothing to do with what I've talked about, but I like this. Remember, it's your job to look for something cool in everyone you meet. When you meet people in this room, it's up to you to find the cool thing about them. This is life, not a fucking sales convention. It's not enough for everyone else to come out and go, hey, yeah, this is what I love. Find it about them. Find cool things about the people that you meet. You guys are an awesome audience. Thank you. I love speaking at Bob's gigs.
Thanks, Tanya.